Hey everybody, welcome back to Something to Complain About. This is A. I'm here with T. T, how's it going?
It is going I mean it's going slow, but it is going. How about you?
I mean, at this point, we are honestly just grateful we're going, right?
Pretty
Speed
much.
is speed is not important. We just have to keep on one foot in front of the other sort of thing. But I mean, it is the weekend, so how's your weekend been going?
Well, it's been a nice weekend. I got some work done, got some cleaning done, went to the farmer's market again. Yesterday evening, which was Saturday evening, helped my husband figure out his electric blanket. Got a rug washed,
This is
and I was
mm,
I was in bed by 8:30 with a nice hot cup of tea with my dogs listening to podcasts.
okay.
that's that's my Saturday night.
This this is not this is not how life was for us at
Yep.
one point when we first met even. But honestly, I can't say that mine was much different. I mean, Friday I was done with work, took a nap because I was tired. It was a long day, and watched some TV. And I'm sure I was in bed by 10 Friday because I had to be up Saturday to teach a class. So my Saturday was, got done teaching, went and got a haircut, went and got groceries, all the fun adult stuff that we get to do. And I don't know, last night I think I was in bed by 11 at the latest. I didn't have tea, probably should have, but yeah, no, I mean, let's just get real. This is not as exciting as it used to be.
You know, I was getting my tea ready last night, and I have a huge tin
Mhm.
of tea. And as I was waiting for my water to warm up, and I'm like, how many different types of tea do I have in my huge canister? 12. Like,
12.
I have 12 different types of tea
So
in
this
the canister in my kitchen.
this is kind of funny
And
because this reminds me of when we were in undergrad. I did not have 12 kinds of tea, but I bet I had 12 kinds of vodka.
oh, and sometimes I would have 12 kinds of booze in
Oh,
a
I
in a
definitely had
single
12 kinds of
setting.
booze. So I
Yeah.
was a big fan of the different flavors of vodka back then. I don't know why. The absolute, right? The lemon
Oh
or
yes.
lemon or whatever they call it, and the black currant and the orange. There's a bunch of them. I don't know what it was about the absolute. Not that I wouldn't drink it now. I don't think you could pay me to drink it now, but
You
definitely
know,
had a lot of absolute.
it was wine coolers. I think when we were in undergrad, it was wine coolers. And then do you remember Zima?
I do. I do. Yes. It was weird. Do they still make? They probably don't still make that. I
They,
don't think I've seen a wine cooler in forever. Like, do they still
yeah,
make those?
I
I
don't
feel
know,
like all
but
the seltzers have taken over from those kinds of things.
well, and here's one drink that I think it's still available. Do you remember Boone's Farm?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh, not good memories, but definitely memories.
That was I know where I grew up, that was like everybody's intro to
That's
out.
absolutely that and Mad
Yeah,
Dog, right? Those were your
yeah,
intros to, hey, guess what?
yeah.
We're gonna go out. I don't know about where you were, but where I grew up, it was so small. Like when we would go out to drink, like okay, as high schoolers, when you get together and do stuff you were probably not supposed to do, like we would go out to. They called it the Grove, right? Because it was literally a shelter belt of trees out in the middle of somebody's farm, and there was enough space out there you could park a bunch of cars and you could drink. But that was, yeah, Boone's, Mad Dog. Even in college, when I would go back from where we went to undergrad back to where I grew up, like I didn't see a lot of it with the people that we went to undergrad with. I didn't see a lot of boons in the dorm or anywhere else, I guess, that I went. But when I would go back home for a weekend or to visit, everybody was still drinking boons.
Well, that's because back then, what you could buy boons for what, 250, $3,
If that, right?
if
It's
that.
a little
Yeah.
bit like today if you go to Trader Joe's, you can get 2 buck chuck.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
much different.
and again, I grew up in a rural community too. So we had, again, very, very limited.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my husband, when we were still dating, like, his favorite beer was Michelob. And that was like way fancy because I lived in Coors and Budweiser country.
Bush
You
Light,
know,
Bud Light.
there, there was Coors, there was Budweiser, and then I mean, sometimes we would figure out how to get into liquor cabinets, and then we just had whatever hard liquor was available.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't picky. We couldn't buy it
No.
and we couldn't afford it, so we got whatever we could get our hands on. But like my uncles would drink Old Milwaukee and
Oh, yeah.
Schlitz. Like I mean, we were driving around the other day. I don't know where we were going, and there was a Schlitz sign hanging off a bar here in the city, and I was
Oh,
like, "Is that that? Do they still have that?" Like, you would have thought that kind of stuff would have. Maybe it doesn't die out. I don't know,
I
but
I wonder if that was more regional
could have
because
been.
I know like Coors was it seemed like Coors, Budweiser, um, Michelob if you wanted to be fancy, but I don't remember seeing or even any of like the dads or drinking those. Like uh I think my family was like a Coors family and moonshine, but the
Yeah,
moonshine's for another.
I think it depended on where we were, right? My mom's
Yeah.
family was way out in the western side of the state, and we lived on the eastern side of the state where my dad's family was. My mom's family had Miller High Life, Coors, Old Milwaukee,
Yeah.
Schlitz, whatever. My
Mm,
dad's side had stuff like Coors was still there too. They had Pabst Blue Ribbon. Michelob was a little bit more common, and then Miller, whatever. I mean, I remember seeing there are
mhm.
different options for the Miller stuff. So, like, yeah, I think it just depends on where you live. But I mean, the whole thought there is what happened to us? Like, we used to have fun on Friday and Saturday nights, and now we want to be in bed long before
Well,
midnight. Something
but
changed. I mean, we changed.
well, I think around between 40 and 45, relaxing in bed by 9 p.m. on a Saturday night became fun.
It
The
did,
days of dancing on top of tables and drinking a
which
variety of whatever.
which I just want to point out to our listeners. I don't have any experience dancing on tables. But T does, and she's going to tell us
Right.
about them a little bit. Aren't you? I think you
I
are.
am. I have
Okay.
a lot of experience dancing on tables. And what is kind of funny about that is nobody ever expects the little short girl to be the one to be able to make it up onto the table and dance. Um, but I was that short girl and I did. And as a matter of
And you like a
fact,
challenge, so
I do. As a matter of fact, you remember what our desks looked like in college in our dorm rooms?
I do.
Okay. I
Yeah.
used to get up on the desk and
Oh,
dance. Yeah.
wait. In which dorm? Because
The G one
the desks were very different in the different dorms. G okay,
in
and
G.
definitely in the in well, it's not there anymore, but in that dorm, they were very heavy and very wooden, and they were fine. Like they were on the floor. Whereas
Yep.
in K and
Oh,
S
that's right.
dorms, they were connected to the wall with a very bad brace, so like you wouldn't want to stand on it because you may not you may not escape without a concussion. But the
Well,
desks in G were like you could, yeah, you could have.
there
They
just
were
was,
crazy solid.
yeah, but there wasn't much space, but it was solid
No,
because I could get up there and just start going,
yeah, you totally could have.
and
Yeah,
and it didn't do anything. But yeah, I've also danced on top of cars, anything that's a flat surface,
there you go. Yeah,
tables, stages, coffee tables.
I mostly stuck to floors, but you like to diversify your experience differently, so that's fine. And let's be clear, you had way more talent than I did. So, like, you should have been the one on the table or the stage, and I should not have been. Nobody
It
benefited from that if I were the one on the table or the stage.
it does take talent
I know.
to climb up onto a platform while drunk and wearing heels.
I was going to say, but it also takes an awful
And
lot of alcohol, which is kind of the interesting part, right? Like, how, like, if we were to try to drink today what we drank before,
oh yeah.
how would that I don't even try. So my question is, would we survive at
Um,
this age?
no. I think like every so often, like I'll have a beer or a glass of wine,
Yeah,
and the beer really doesn't affect me. It never really has. The
yeah,
wine, I might feel a little tipsy if I hadn't eaten, but it's, yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of was last time I was visiting you and we went out to eat and we had sangria.
hmm that
And
was
I don't know
good.
how much I was good. I don't remember how much of that I drank, but I also was old enough to be like, tea. This is getting better and better with each sip, so you better
Mhm.
stop.
See,
Well,
and when we were
that,
younger, that warning wasn't a warning. It was a hit the gas, keep going,
yes, yeah,
right? It's tasting better with each sip means you need to give me another one. And
right.
now at this age, it's more like, uh-oh.
I
It
know
is
we're,
a warning now because we know better. We know if we keep going, we're going to be in trouble.
well, that, and we were downtown on a Saturday night and we had taken public transport down
We did.
and I was in my mid 40s.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, now there's only so many bathroom breaks that people are willing to allow you to take
Mhm.
on
Well,
the
and let's
way
be
home.
real. It's not like it's a smooth ride back either when we're
No,
on the train. So you're just bouncing
no.
all over the place. And if you got to go, it's not. I mean, let's get real. Other people pee on themselves on the train all the time. So it's not like it's not doable, but it's probably not a good. It's not fun.
Well, I mean, other people go poopy on the train.
They do.
They do.
I mean, that was the same visit, right?
It was the
That
same
was the same
visit.
visit. You. I, I don't remember what we were doing that day, but we get a text from T saying, I'm on the train and there's a turd on the seat next to me. And initially, I honestly thought you were like talking about a person who
No.
had somehow irritated you, and you were like, no, no, no. Literally, somebody left a turd on the seat. And I was like, well, that's CTA for you. I mean, we're not
Well,
surprised by that, but
that's I will never forget that because that was such a wonderful day. I spent the day on my own and I went to the Art Institute and had a lovely lunch and went shopping and got my cannoli. And I'm walking towards the station, just thinking about how much I love Chicago. And I walk onto the credit train because, like an idiot, I get on during rush hour. And so then there's no place to go. I walk in and all of a sudden, like I'm elected to be the one to sit next to the pile of crap on the seat. and
Mhm.
I couldn't get through. And then remember, that was also the same train I was on where I texted you a bit later and said, I'm stuck north of Wrigley Field because they shut down the line because of a police incident. So
Mhm.
then I was stuck up in the air
Mhm.
next to the poop
Mhm.
because
Stuck on the
somebody
train.
just stuck on the train because somebody decided to shoot someone at the next stop.
Yep.
And
We were
that,
out driving around and we were like, okay, well, get off wherever you can and stay where you ever you have to. We'll come get you. And then I think as we were driving your direction, the train started moving again. And
right.
so we did meet you and pick you up somewhere, but you we didn't have to go as far as we thought you were going to be.
Oh, no,
But that was
no.
also not a total surprise.
No, I did make it back to your place because remember, that was when I got lost. Like, I navigated my way all around Chicago until I got onto your block and I
Oh,
couldn't remember what building you lived in. So I called you.
I
You
was
looked
oh
out
yeah,
the
that's right.
window
Because
and
I
waved
was
at
like, I
me.
see you on the sidewalk. Just turn around. You're there.
I could make it all the
So
way
it's
downtown and around and everything
yeah.
else, but I got lost right in front of literally in
I
front of your
mean,
building.
it's easy to do. A lot of these buildings look alike. But I mean, that's just the thing, right? Like, we get to this point and we can't do Fridays and Saturdays like we used to. There are some
Well,
people our age who are out drinking until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how they do it. And I know that sounds
well,
like I'm just
I
super old, but like, hangovers are rough.
I think what it is that by the time someone is our age, like they're lifers, like they haven't, they never really stopped drinking,
Oh, that's true.
and so their tolerance and everything is really built up. You know, because I mean, think back, like especially by mid 20s, late 20s, you could kind of see where some people kind of settled down a bit and either quit drinking alcohol entirely or in moderation, and then the others who just, keep going. I think that's part of it. Like my tolerance right now is nowhere near what it was, 25 years ago.
Not even close. Not even close. I wish it would be more fun. I mean, honestly, it's cheaper now. Now,
Well,
this is the problem, right? When I couldn't really afford it, my tolerance was fantastic. And now that I can afford it, I don't have any tolerance, so I don't need it, right? Like,
which is,
it's something is not the universe is amiss when it comes to
I
this
mean,
particular issue.
I'm just thinking like that was really an awesome superpower
It was.
at that time that we just didn't realize we had. And that's a
Yeah,
superpower that most of us end up um, losing. You have that superpower, but we also have those nasty hangovers.
right,
So after a while too, I think it comes to a point of like when you go a certain ways down the road and you know how the story's going to end. And I'm not that much of a masochist to be like, yes, I want a hangover all the time.
right.
You
Do
know,
you do you remember how we used to handle our hangovers when we were
oh
that
yeah,
age?
hair of the dog.
Right. And it worked mostly, right? Like,
Yeah, until
I
the
mean, we
next
thought it
day.
worked. I mean, we thought it worked, but like, I remember, oh, I shouldn't admit this. I remember taking to even my lit classes, right? I had this old, I shouldn't call her old, it was her last year teaching, right? And it was a 9:30, 8:30, something like that class. Like that was that we've talked about like signing up for classes in the past, right? Like and how you as
Right.
a freshman and sophomore you kind of get stuck with the stupid early crap and I would go. So I got one of these mugs from the bookstore, right? The thermos mugs that were, 24 ounces or whatever. It's supposed to be a coffee
Mhm.
mug. That's not what I put in there.
That's not what you put in there.
God
Now
knows,
see,
orange juice and vodka, or orange juice and slow gin, or something like that. And I would go to class and I'd sip on my, it was hair of the dog, right? Because I'd been out all weekend and I could do that back then. And I could still go to class and I could still participate in class while I was sipping on my orange juice and vodka or whatever the heck it was. And it worked out just fine. I mean, you just had to bring it down slowly each time you did it so that you weren't overdoing it. Otherwise, you'd end up compounding the hangover. Now, if I tried that, the hangover would kick me into next week.
Oh, it's been so long since I haven't had a hangover. And I think with
Yeah.
that, I had to drive the next morning.
Yeah, it's been
But
a couple years since I have because the last one was so bad. I knew I could never do it again. Like, well, I
well,
mean, I
that's what,
could, but I was just like,
yeah,
this isn't fun. I'm good.
I I was so well, I mean, I was sick, but when I got up, I puked and got most of it out. Um, and then, just a ton of coffee, had crackers, smoked a lot of cigarettes, and then just sheer determination to get,
Yep, yep.
so,
I think what's
but
really interesting is I mean, I looked this up the other day just because I knew we were going to talk about this a little bit, but I found an article that kind of breaks out hangover experiences between the generations. And I thought,
oh,
who's doing this
whoops.
kind of data collection? I don't really know, but they did. And something that they found that surprised me was the average number of hours the different
Hmm.
generations spend with hangovers. And us as Gen Xers, our average reported hangover lasts 5.75 hours. I don't know how they get to this number. Like they didn't share that like
Right.
statistical like data
Oh
collection
no.
information.
Mine
I'm just
mine
like
always
just
seemed
5 6 hours.
no. I mean, maybe now at our age because people who are our age and hardcore
Yeah,
drinkers, maybe that's what they can work it down to, but I don't remember mine ever being that short. That would have been a blessing.
that would have been nice.
I know,
Boomers
right?
are a little bit more than Gen X. Boomers are about 5.97 hours. Gen Z is crazy. Theirs is 5.09. So they're barely a 5 hour hangover. Millennials, though, take the trophy. I don't know how they got screwed with this number, but they report 7.5 hours for a hangover.
So here's a question I have, and I always have so many questions with all of these, but when are they counting when the hangover starts? Because like I always think for myself, I I drink, when I've had a hangover, I drank, I
Hmm.
passed out, and then when I woke up, then that was like when my hangover clock started.
Yeah, that's seems like about what they're asking people. When you wake
So
up, when do you start feeling better? Like you're not
may
still hungover.
so maybe with millennials now that they are the age where like they have young children
Hmm.
and like kids that will still get up overnight or they're not quite yet of the age where let mom and dad sleep in. Maybe they're having to wake up sooner and take care of things. And that's where things are extending instead of popping some pills, grabbing some coffee or some
Yeah.
crackers and being able to like stretch out and relax a bit. I wonder if that has
Well,
something to do with it.
I I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I also wonder if it isn't the type of alcohol people are drinking, right? Because
Oh,
this
could
survey
be.
also looked at like what are they reporting as the most hangover inducing alcohol? And
Oh, do
so
tell.
for Gen Xers and Boomers, so both of our generations report it's tequila,
Well,
right? So
I
like
would agree.
30% of our generation. I mean, I hate tequila. Never have liked. I mean, I don't mind a good margarita, but beyond that, like keep that. It tastes like motor oil to me.
Oh,
Just keep it away.
I
Um,
love tequila. Tequila is good.
oh,
Tequila
you
hangover,
can
not
have the
good.
tequila. Not good. No.
Well, then
Um,
you can have the whiskey.
that's fine. I'll take the whiskey any day. Millennials are drinking whiskey and rum, so that doesn't. That I've always thought is going to give you a worse hangover, and it seems like they are experiencing that. Gen Zers seem to be vodka and gin. So I kind of feel like that also makes sense because it, and this is purely anecdotal. Like if I'm drinking something, I will feel worse with whiskey or bourbon.
Yeah.
I don't always notice it if I don't drink as much vodka these days. If I have something, it's usually like a gin and soda or whatever. Like I don't notice the hangover much with that, which is probably why I drink that. Again, purely anecdotal. Like I have any idea. Women specifically found that for them, wine was also bad, generated more hangover, more headache, that kind of thing.
Right. I have
Men
never had a
in
hangover
general
from
were
wine.
really,
Really? No. Any hangover I've ever
I
had
have,
has been from the hard stuff, like
okay,
vodka, um, tequila, although I consider tequila more of a gateway alcohol because I find after I do a few shots of tequila, then pretty much anything can go down
ready
my
for anything.
gullet.
There you go.
Um, including apparently one time I had something called a cement mixer, which I guess is really gross, but I won't be able to tell you, but I know I drank it.
They're disgusting.
The last thing I remember was my
The pre
cousin telling me as we were getting the limes and sprinkling the salt for our tequila shots that he was trying to explain to me that we weren't doing tequila shots. The
I mean, the prerequisite to drinking a cement mixer, at least back then, was you had to be basically wasted already. Because nobody was drinking that sober. They were
well, I,
horrific. They were awful. They were just meant to make you more drunk, which
yeah, and
is kind of interesting. But like I've had red wine will give me a hangover if I drink too much of it. Like if I mean, back in the day, this restaurant is no longer there. But do you remember Vivace?
yes, I
Yeah,
do.
so they've been gone for a year, a decade, plus 2 decades, whatever now. But I had a friend that worked there, and she would get like her employee discount, and so sometimes we all get together there, three or four of us, and have a night where we were just eating and drinking. And there were nights the three of us would go through 4 or 5 bottles of wine. I don't know how we got home. Don't try this at home, kids. I don't remember how we got home, but we got home, but like the next morning, you're just like, I mean, because I don't like white, gotta have red. So by the
Um,
time the next morning rolls around, those tannins are kicking your ass and getting from one place to like just crawling to the bathroom. I
and
think I've
I'm
had my worst
wondering,
hangovers from that or tequila.
like for myself, because I cannot drink red wine because I triggers migraines, like boom.
Yes, really common.
That and maybe it's the because I do have to stick with white wines or blushes at the very
Yeah,
most, and I can't go too dry either because I'll either get a migraine or I'll have dreams of being persecuted by demons.
that sounds
It's
about
not
right.
it's not funny. I can't
Well,
drink
I mean,
champagne or any yeah, I mean it's
it's
funny to
funny unless
hear
it's
about
you.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Do you remember the rule? Like, I don't know if this was a thing where you grew up or even when I'm sure it was when we were in school, but you and I didn't get drunk a ton together. It wasn't like by
No.
the time we met, we were both 21. You were already married. And I mean, we spent a couple New Year's Eves together, and but we didn't get like hammered. It wasn't a thing we had kind of gotten beyond that because at that point we could buy alcohol and it wasn't as fun, I guess, as when you couldn't buy alcohol, right?
That's usually yeah.
That's usually how it goes.
Once
But do
you
you
have fun
remember
when
the
it's legal.
rule? Like, I don't when we were growing up
There
and when we would get into
well,
undergrad, the rule
hold
was
on a second. You had rules with alcohol?
well, the rule was about how to mix the alcohol, like what to drink so that you wouldn't get sick. It wasn't like you had to
Oh,
do it, but like they always told us maybe a rule is a bad way to think about it. Maybe it's more of a maxim, but it
so
was liquor to beer, right? You're in the clear beer to liquor, never sicker. So like the whole idea was you needed to drink in a specific order to avoid being completely sick the next day. And I mean, it was just I remember learning it mostly on the dorm floor. So it must have been something we did the first few years of college,
the
but
the only guidance I followed during those days was somebody saying, "Hey T, come drink this." Okay. That was
That's
pretty much
fair.
the
Didn't you told me a story one time about special hangover sunglasses. That
yes,
was you, right?
that was me.
You wanna share that story? Or do we wanna just let our listeners
Our
paint
listeners
a
can
picture in their
wonder.
mind?
I mean, considering, like at this point, most of our listeners are people who knew me back then. They're like, oh, yeah,
They're like, "We know. We remember what they look
we
like."
know.
Kinda think
We,
I remember what they look like
they're,
too.
they're like, we remember the stories she's not sharing.
I don't think I had special sunglasses, but I probably needed them. Um, what I mean, so water is obviously a good hangover
Yeah,
remedy.
water,
Um,
coffee.
coffee. It's kind of interesting too because the study that talks about some of this stuff, and it just made into an article, like 28 to 29% of people say they use hydrating as a
Yeah.
cure, as a remedy for the hangover, which, okay, that makes sense. Water, I mean, alcohol dehydrates you, got to have water. Like, even today, if we go out drinking, we come home, we have, and like when we go out drinking, I have a drink or two and that's it.
Hmm.
My tea will have more drinks than that, but like there's always water and Advil sitting on the counter so that we can drink it and then go to bed, right? Like, make it simple. Um, 20% of people were saying sleep. 14% of
Hmm.
people are talking about medication, and by that, they're talking about pain relievers. So
Yeah.
things like Advil, Aleve. Do not do Tylenol, people. Not a good idea with alcohol. And then 9% say
Too
caffeine, which
late.
is what you're saying. Too late.
Too
People
late.
do use Tylenol, but we got to be like, Tylenol and alcohol are not happy for your liver. So, like, you should try not to use Tylenol if you're drunk. Use your
You
Advils or your
should
Aleve if you
you
can.
should have told me this about 30 years ago.
It says it on the bottle, but none of us read the bottle.
Does it
Um,
really? Oh.
yeah. And then there's 3% of people who say vitamins. And this is kind of interesting. Like, I saw that, I'm like, what? Who's taking vitamins? But there actually are supplements specifically marketed for this purpose. Now, there are two that come to mind that I think are funny. One is there is a patch, a transdermal patch, one something you put on your skin of vitamin B1. So
Oh.
B1 is for people who do struggle with alcoholism, they're almost always deficient in B1 because alcohol destroys B1. And so they need to replete B1, but they people have found that if they put one of these on after a night of drinking that their hangovers are less. So they literally market these B1 patches to people as hangover remedies. And I guess it helps. And there's a whole new species of probiotic out there that is being marketed to people that actually helps you break the alcohol down so that you don't get the hangover. And basically, like, I've not tried it because I'm not sure I buy that, but they
But
definitely market it that way.
yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking like it's helpful when you do actually have the hangover. But with some of these things, I mean, y- you're kind of taking away that I don't know if it's a rite of passage or not, but I mean, you you learn to drink responsibly through those hangovers. Like, no matter how
Sure.
much fun you had before, that hangover, like, you don't forget what a hangover feels like. And that's your kind of your lesson of here's the repercussions for taking it a little
Too far.
too
Yeah,
far.
that's fair.
Um, so it's concerning to me, especially from like an addiction perspective of like if you're removing that discomfort, it's just I mean it's for someone's comfort, right? It's not like it's
Yeah.
it's not going to do anything to prevent drunk driving or any other 8 million poor choices you can make or have done unto you when you're under the
No.
influence of alcohol. And it's not going to undo any kind of like alcohol poisoning or anything like that. It's just I have some issues with that. Now, I think about my one of my siblings who had a family wedding, and they were old enough to drink, and said, "Well, I'm going to have a glass of wine." Okay, you can have a glass of wine. And what was happening, well, it was my sister. I got to just say my sister because otherwise the story gets too convoluted. And, she's almost like 30, or she was 30. And so she's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to have a glass of wine." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And then like half an hour later, our sister-in-law shows up and says, "Hey, I just saw, your sister with a glass of red wine." And I'm like, "Oh, well, she was drinking white wine half an hour ago." And then, of course, my sister's catching on that we're watching. And my sister had never drunk before. And like everybody else on the planet, "Oh, this tastes really good." So the next morning, it's time to leave the hotel. And like, we have to leave in like 15 minutes. And we
Mhm.
can't get her to wake up. And I had a key to her room, and she went to open the door. And so I went in, and she's like, she kind of sits up, and she's like, I I think I caught the flu. Can we stay? Can we stay for another day?" And I'm like, "Oh, hell no." I'm like, "You had a hangover. You have a hangover." And
Yeah.
I go, "And you drank too much last night, didn't you?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, how much did you drink?" And she's like, she said like 4 or 5, 6 glasses of wine, no more than six. And I go, "Uh-huh. And you've never drunk before. So that was smart. And which wine did you drink?" "Well, I drank some red, then I drank some white." And, but she's like completely like pleading with me. "Can we please just stay another day? Because I need to sleep, because I'm sick.
You're
I've been
like,
puking."
"No."
And I'm like, "Oh, hell no. Here's some ibuprofen, and you're getting your ass in the car within the next
Yeah.
10 minutes because we got to go."
Yeah.
And,
Which is
a-
fair. I
and
mean,
I'm like,
we all had
"Yeah,
to go through that, right? Like, we
we,
all made the choices we made, and then the next day we
right.
had to drag. I remember going out with our mutual friend T sometimes, and we would be out until sometimes 6 or 7 in the morning. And I would go home and I would shower and then I would go to work for 12 hours and then I would go home and I would go to bed finally. Right. Like, and we
Mhm,
survived it. But we also were, I mean, we were also 21. So, like,
right.
you can survive almost anything in your 20s. We would die today. Like, we would
Oh, yeah.
100% just keel over and it would be the end, which I get. But I mean, the hangover remedy stuff just kind of cracks me up because there's so many options that you can use. And I think everybody probably responds a little bit differently to different remedies. Water
Mm,
is definitely important. Um, like my tea has to take a leave because Advil doesn't work. I can take Advil, it's fine. So, somebody, when I was teaching, well, honestly, one of my closer friends back then was a teacher. We used to go out drinking quite a bit together. Taught me this really interesting trick.
if there's anything about teaching and bonding is alcohol. That's
I
very
mean,
true.
seriously,
No,
we
it's true.
would it's how we survived. I didn't know because I didn't go to school to be a teacher, but they all went to school to be teachers. And so my first year teaching, I was teaching religion in a school where
Mhm,
I didn't need a teaching certificate. So I didn't have that experience. So when the teachers would go out to drink, which is what we did on Friday after school, right after football games
mhm.
or whatever, one of my friends who was one of my like teacher buddies, um, let's be real, I don't know, I did not drink as professionally. Like, she could kick my ass, but she always had the best way to get over it, and it was root beer and Advil.
Ooh.
And I was like, root beer? She's like, just trust me. So I drank it. I had the root beer and the Advil, and I felt better within like 2 hours. The whole day was fine again. I thought I was gonna have to spend my whole like she could tell when I walked into school that morning that I was a little bit hungover because I felt like it would be bad to call in sick after having gone out drinking wine the night before. So like I had this sort of moral dilemma, right? Don't use a sick day. That's not cool. Just go work. You're just like you've been hungover before. It's not a big deal. So drink some water, you'll be fine. It's not gonna be an issue. And she took one look at me and she was like, oh, you need some root beer and some Advil. And I was like, why root beer? She just like, shut up and drink it. So I did. I mean, like, I'm not going to say no. Um, I felt better within 2 hours. It was like I had never had the hangover in the first place. So, like, I'm just curious. Hangover remedies are interesting, right? Like, everybody seems to
Mhm.
have a special thing. Some people like certain kinds of tea, some people like whatever. But I think it's pretty obvious that everybody's got their thing. They've learned it from some experience.
Mhm.
I don't do the root beer much anymore because I do not allow myself to drink enough. I learned the lesson that you were talking about, right, earlier in this
Right.
episode. So like I do not because I know it's not worth it. It's not worth it for me at this age to
No.
wake up in the morning and wish I hadn't. I've got stuff to do. It doesn't matter what day it is, things have to get done. So like
Well,
I can't spend the whole day just, curled up on the couch wishing, I can't do that anymore. I used to be able to, but I can't do it now.
and I think about just even, and we're not all that old, but just thinking like now I have a lot of nights where like I'm up half the night because of hormones,
Right.
insomnia, all that. And like it used to be, and I've always had issues with insomnia, but it used to be like, okay, well, if I only got 2 hours of sleep, I could still function during the day, but now I cannot. So I'd hate to
Right.
think what if I had a hangover like I had 25 years ago or so. I mean, it'd be a long weekend, like a 3-day weekend just
Hmm.
um
Recovering.
yeah.
We got to recover.
And then and
We
then
didn't have to much before.
and then trying to catch up the whole next week.
Right. Yeah. Things have changed in the last 25 years. We used to be able to do hangovers. Now we've had to hang it up.
We do.
Yeah. Which is that's okay. Maybe that's just the way. I don't know. This is a new rite of passage, right? We did our rite of passage. We managed to do all the fun stuff, and now we understand that we can enjoy a few drinks. We don't have to get sloshed.
We FA'd and we FO'd.
We sure did FA and FO. We absolutely did. And the fun part is we're still here to tell the tale. Now, we know better.
We know
At
better.
least I hope we know better. We try
And
to know
that's
better.
and that's where the concern for some of the things that you brought up for hangovers kind of concern me, or even preventing hangovers kind of concern me because that totally was, yeah, it's that miserable experience afterwards. Because I even think like with my sister after that, and that was the one and only time that ever happened with her. And of course, then she got the lecture of, you're not puking in my car. We're not making any special stops. I don't want to hear a word from you about not feeling good.
They sound oddly like something your mom would have said.
Uh, well, guess who I learned from?
I was going to
Um,
say,
and when it was all over, she goes, "Wine is never going to cross these lips again." And I said, "Well, honey, you can drink wine, just don't be
you don't
drinking
need
all the
6
wine."
glasses. Right.
Right.
Yeah. You have to find your limit. You have to find what is, and the way you find that is probably the hangover, right?
Well, and I think hangovers are like Mother Nature's way of going. It's balancing out. That's the only way Mother Nature could figure out balancing out all the fun that you had the night before. Like
Yeah.
it has to be that bad.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that the probiotic that's available now is also very much dose dependent. You can have 2 or 3 drinks and it will probably help you not have a headache. But if you are going to actually go out and party it up like we used to party it up when we were younger, you'd have to take the whole damn bottle. Like, it wouldn't prevent
Uh,
you from getting a hangover if you were drinking a lot. But if you're just having a couple drinks, it'll probably help you not do that. But there's a point at which, like, you just can't, right? You can't overcome it with a supplement like that. I
mhm.
don't recommend it to people. I know I've heard lots of advertisements about it. I don't know enough about it. From what I understand, what it does is it alcohol breaks down into something called aldehyde inside your gut, and that's what makes you feel like crap. So this breaks the aldehyde down so that you don't feel like crap. But there's just not enough of it. So if you're really
Mhm.
out there and you're pounding down 6 glasses of wine, you're still going to have a hangover. Like, that's just the chemistry of it. But I do think you're right. I do think we have to be kind of considerate of the fact that there are consequences to things that we do. And I know that
Right,
sounds awful to people who are enjoying their 20s and doing the things we did. That doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy them. Please keep doing it. Just be careful. Just also
right,
understand that part of the way that you figure out how many you can have is also related to how badly you feel the next day and maybe the day after that, right? So you got to use it a little bit, but it's kind of fun. We did our thing. We're good now. We
we
know
did our
better
thing.
because we know we want to go to. We know our Saturday and Friday nights are basically going to be pathetic, and that's okay. We're cool with that. That's our new deal.
No, I'm proud of my Saturday night. Had a nice cup of
I know.
tea.
I know, but
I
if you
know.
asked the 21-year-old us, we would have at 21 called our current 48-year-old Saturday nights kind of pathetic, wouldn't have we?
Oh, yeah. When I was 21,
Absolutely, we would have made fun of
I
ourselves.
I couldn't even visualize 40. I'll be 48 in like 4 days.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine 30, let alone 40, let alone
Right.
late 40s.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just saying, if we could go back and interview 22-year-old TNA, they would
God.
both be like, "Y'all are lame." That's what they would say. We were lame. Whatever.
And we would be giving tips on remedies that that the current TNA have forgotten about that we had tried.
Probably because we tried about. I know. I tried a bunch of stuff.
Oh man, I did too.
I didn't drink
Um,
in high school at all. Like, I did not have that experience. I would go out with friends sometimes, but I would
oh
not
no,
drink. And
no.
then when I got to
I
college, it was a whole different conversation.
See, I was opposite. I did most of my partying in high school. So by the time I
Mhm.
got to college, I did party, but I very soon became the one to like make sure that everybody else was okay. Like I was the mom going,
Yeah.
how about I drive? And then
Yep.
they'd be like, well, your driving is dangerous at any time, but
But it's
okay.
better than one of us driving. You drove
Right.
me a few times. I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
I know I've driven you crazy a few times too,
I
but
mean, I've driven you
oh
crazy a
man,
few times too. That's why we're still here.
yeah, that's true. But no, that would be interesting to see what we would say. Of course, first of all, you'd have to get me off the table first.
Well, at
But
some point you wear out, and then you just either you fall or you ask for help down. But at some point you wear out,
no,
or you're so drunk you know you have to get off the table. I get
no.
it.
Usually, it would be somebody got tired of watching the tea show, and then they would be like, "No, you need to get down off the table now because you're making an ass out of yourself and all of us."
Somebody was doing damage control. That's fair. I mean, it's kind of fun to go back and think
I
about
was
all this
I
stuff.
was not using my own. Oh, I was using my own judgment, wrong as it was.
Well, that's okay. I mean, that was tequila judgment is often not the best judgment, but
Right.
we've all been there in some fashion or another.
That we have.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of fun. That kind of lets us wrap it up with a simple question.
yeah,
Maybe if our viewers would like to share, we would love to hear any of your first hangover stories, or actually any hangover remedies that you remember trying or you still use today. Let us know in the comments. Be
yes.
sure to like and subscribe. Please share with your friends. And as always, check back with us next week for something new to complain about. T, anything else you want to throw out there before we go for today?
Oh no, I think I have already shared enough.
All right. It was fun. Until
It
next
was
time,
fun.
be good, everybody, and we will see you again soon.
Or whatever.
Whatever for sure.